interest in being recognized. We will unmute you or ask your question during the Q&A period at the end of the webinar. The ICC Global Membership Council connects building safety professionals from outside the United States with the US-based professionals who have an interest in advancing the cause of building safety internationally. Membership in the ICC not required. Initiative includes webinar series, annual conference events, including the Global Building Safety Forum, and of course, networking opportunities. Today, next slide, please. Today, we are going on a journey, like I said, with three STEAM architects to talk to us and educate us about three unique projects and their involvements with the local building departments. I am honored and privileged to have Mr. Shadi Galal from Egypt, Mr. Ben Stagg from the United Kingdom, and Mr. Brian Fanning from the United States. Our first speaker is architect Shadi Galal. Well, I have to mention something actually. The original speaker for the Egyptian part is architect Hussein Assad, the chairman of Midad Consultant Engineers. However, due to unexpected family emergency, he was not able to join us. In his place, we are lucky to have architect Shadi Galal, the architecture department manager at Midad Consultant Engineers, supported by architect Mohammed Subhi, the managing director of Midad Consultant Engineers. Shadi is a creative architect with 19 years of experience in the field. He's a grade A certified by the Qatari Engineering and Consulting Offices Accrediting Committee. He comes with a tons of experience in team management to start revised projects from scratch to the construction drawing, putting into consideration architectural, environmental, structural, economical, municipal laws, along with the local building codes and standards. Shadi works mainly in the MENA regions, including the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Emirate of Ras Al Khaimah, which is RAK, United Arab Emirates, and Doha, Qatar, Libya, and Egypt. Shadi is graduated from the University of Cairo with a degree in architectural engineering in 1998. And like I said, he is the architecture department manager at Midad Consultant Engineers. With that, my friend, Bashmuhandis Shadi, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, and thank you for the honor that you gave us the opportunity to speak about one of our projects that we love very much. First of all, Midad is in the market since 1988 with different names, but with the name of Midad since 2009. We hope that the attendees find what we will say today helpful and giving some ideas and a way of solve problems. So I will share my presentation here. And let me know if it's on. Just a minute. Here it is. If it's on, please tell me.
Yes, it looks good. Screen? Thank you.
It's on screen?
Yes.
Okay. The project that we chose to speak about is the Hayat International Academy. Hayat International Academy is an international school here in Egypt in the 5th settlement in New Cairo. And we, here it is, the project, Hayat International Academy. The main concept that we choose here is the volute. The volute, as we know, has, I will annotate, is have a point to start. Sometimes we call it the eye, and then the curve is going out through the lines wider and wider, and this represents the idea of growing through the journey in the school. So if we apply it on, this is the concept of growth. So in the middle, we can call it the KG stage, then the elementary stage, then the high and mid school stage. This is what we did on the layout here. So this is the volute, and on the eye here we put the theater of the KG stage. We will see here. This is the start of the process of the teaching and learning in the theater of the KG building, as it's outdoor space, very intimate and open to sky, to say that the limit is the sky. Then, and we put the KG building here in the middle, next to the eye. Then we go through the journey. We put the elementary building here. Then when we go further than the eye, we put the mid and high school building here. So that was the main concept that we used here. And then when we talk about the codes, the buildings itself will face the rules and the items that we need to respect and follow. We chose, there are a lot of codes here in Egypt to follow. The firefighting code, the special needs code, the car parking code, a lot of codes, but we chose the firefighting code as it will affect the most on the buildings. It has the bigger effect. Sorry, the bigger effect on the building. Here, some of the items that we need to follow and respect. When we talk about the firefighting code, we need to know the function of the building we are designing. We are going through the design process. Here, in this case, it's a simply occupancy group under the subgroup schools and colleges. This is a very important piece of information we need to know, because it will affect the other data we need to know in the code. Then we need to know the occupancy load rate, the rate that every person, how many meters he needs as a rate in the building, so we can know how many people will use this building. so we can know the occupancy load, the total occupancy load that we need to deal with in this building. So we are the group A. The group A under the subsection classrooms and laboratory labs, and every subsection has its rate meter per person. Then we need to know and put into consideration the travel distances we need to follow and respect, even the building is sprinklered or not, and how the distance we need to not to exceed when it's a dead end or something like that. So in the group A, the dead end are 6 meters. The travel distances we need to follow and not exceed is 50 meters if this is a sprinklered building, and 35 meters if it's not a sprinklered building. So it's a sprinklered building, of course, and this is why we need to put into our considerations that 50 meters travel distance not to exceed. So the distance between the two, the number of exits or the number of stairs need to be 100, 2 times 50 meters. Then we need to know also in our design process how many stairs we need to provide this building. It's 2 or 3 or 4. Sometimes it's 1, but under some conditions it's not applied here. In the code, it defined if it's a group A or a group H, and the occupancy load, the total occupancy load exceed 1,000 people per floor. So it's 4 emergency stairs need to be provided. It's called here, and 3 in another between 600 and 1,100 person per floor. In our condition, we need just 2 for all the buildings we talked about. Just to need 2 emergency exits, and this is why that's what we provided already. All of these data are very important when we applying, when we going through the design process, so we don't go back again when we discover that there is something is wrong or something is missing. And it's very important to integrate all of these pieces of information or data in the process of design, and not to enforce them after what we did in the conceptual or the design development. So when we applied it, we thought the nursery ground floor building. This is the ground floor of the nursery building. As we see, it's complying with the main concept. We don't forget the main concept. The main concept is the volute. The volute, why the volute? Because it represents the growing process of the journey that the kids going through when they are going through the journey of learning. So here is the theater I talked about, and this is the building of the nursery, and it's respecting the curves of the volute here, and this is why the curves are here are so harder than the curves are in the other buildings. And we put here and here the 2 exits we need, and they apply with the function, they apply with the main concept. They are not so odd. Nothing is like ugly or something. No, This is the ground floor, and we can see it also on the first floor here. The distance between the two exits didn't exceed the 100 meters we talked about, the travel distance, I mean. So there is no place in the building is more than 50 meters away from the exits. And we put them on the end of the building, so it covers the whole building with no problem. And we put them also in places that not affecting the elevations and the north, because this is a school, so we need to put all the most of the or all the classrooms and directing them to the north here. So when we choose the place on the plan, we didn't affect any of the function or the main concept. This is the stair we are talking about. And when we are dealing with the stair, we are dealing also with the masses of this stair. It's not just a stair, it's a feature. It's a mass. We can put a lot of elements and make it as identity for the building, that we dealing with the stair, every stair of the different buildings, we are dealing it as its identity. It has its own identity for this building. So even if the kids are seeing this element, they are knowing that this is for their building. And for the other building, we are dealing with the masses with other elements. So it's different, but homogeneous with the masses of the whole the school. So here we can find a picture for the stair that we are talking about. Here is another shot for it from the real course, and this is the other one. So we can see that the stair is not just an element we need to enforce in the building or enforce in the plan or in the mass. We deal with it as a beautiful element we need to express a lot of things with. And that's it for me. I hope that was doing well with all the people here. And thank you for this opportunity again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Architect Shadi, for shedding some light on the Haya Academy. And I believe there is going to be another campus on the other side of Cairo. This one was built in the Tagammo, the fifth settlement. But I think you're working on a different project across from on the other side of the Tagammo. Is that it?
Yeah. Yes. We were doing a lot of another projects, educational and retails and administrative buildings. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, Bash Mohandes. Thank you for sharing this project with us. Our next speaker is Mr. Ben Stagg. He's the founding director of Stagg Architects and is a Royal Institute of British Architects registered architect with over 20 years of experience in London practice. He studied at the University of Sheffield from 1994, graduating in 2000 and gaining the Royal Institute of British Architects professional qualification and registrations in 2002. Ben worked for Bush Hale Henley, now Henley Hale Brown, from 2000 until 2004, where he gained valuable experience in a highly respected, award-winning practice. In 2004, Ben helped establish the London office of DLA Architecture and AJ Top 100 Company, and developed a keen commercial awareness across a wide range of sectors while designing and delivering a number of multi-million pound projects. In 2011, Ben established ZAG Architects to focus on delivering a high-quality, full architectural service to a range of clients, building on his extensive experience in smaller, bespoke projects as well as large commercial schemes. Thanks to an exceptional level of loyalty from a number of amazing clients, Ben has successfully grown the office and now is leading an experienced and dedicated team on a range of interesting residential, commercial, and cultural projects. As the principal of ZAG Architects, Ben is responsible for the creative direction and management of the office, and being a small team, Ben is able to personally involved in all work from conceptual to completion. I am honored to have my friend here, Ben Stagg. Ben, the audience is yours now. Thank you.
Imad, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. That was very kind of you. Thank you also, Shabi, for your presentation, which was really very interesting. I'm going to set myself a timer, actually, because I'm aware Brian also needs to speak within our time, and I'm going to try and go through this in around about 10 minutes, which should be okay. I'll just share my screen with you as well. Hopefully this comes up okay, and everyone can see that. Is that good for everyone?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so, well, I won't do more introductions. That's covered. I work in London. It's a small practice that we have. And the project I'd like to talk to you about is very different to the one we've just seen. But I think that's good because it means we'll have plenty of variety today. I'll jump straight into it. First of all, tell you a little about the client. So the client is an organisation called CABE, which stands for the Chartered Association of Building Engineers. So they are an industry specialist, a professional organisation, over 9,000 members. They include a wide range of different professions, and they have a real strong focus on collaboration and promoting best practice in the industry. So for us, this was to have that kind of organisation as a client was a real challenge, but also a kind of privilege to be able to work with a very educated client on their building. And they're aiming to be a net zero carbon organisation by 2025. And you'll see that aspiration was a key part, a key driving force in the project. So the project is based in Northampton, which for those of you unfamiliar with the UK, the map on the right shows where that is with the red arrow, pretty much in the centre of England. And despite CABE being this amazing forward-looking organisation, their building that they had themselves built in 1977 really was not particularly unimpressive. Not particularly impressive, was rather unimpressive in terms of its appearance. It had been subject to many substandard alterations over the years, and it was now performing very badly in terms of energy, comfort, and compliance. To elaborate on that further, if you look inside, the windows had been replaced once in its lifetime, but they were of very poor quality. People just simply couldn't open them. They were drafty. The lighting, the quality of the lighting, the color temperature was very bad with flickering lights, which made it very uncomfortable. The acoustic performance was very bad. There was a lot of reverberation, which made a lot of the spaces very uncomfortable. It suffered from overheating in summer, very cold in winter. There was no wheelchair access to half of the building because there was no lift. And really, it was just a kind of very joyless building that hadn't had much love given to it over the years. So the brief from CABE to us was to improve on its compliance under the building regulations. The key thing here is, as an existing building, they weren't obliged by the building regulations to do a lot to it, but they were keen to go beyond their minimum standard and really be exemplary in terms of implementing best practice so that they could be demonstrating to others that they were doing this too. So we were looking to really focus on improving comfort through better ventilation, heating, cooling, lighting and access. They also wanted, though, this to be an exemplar project, a sustainable project, embodying very important principles of retain, reuse and recycle. It needed to be a welcoming place for the staff working there and visitors. And of course, very importantly, everything had to be done to a very tight budget. They're an industry organisation, so they needed to demonstrate to their members that they are spending their money sensibly. So the key moves we made in the building, this is a cut through of the ground floor. So we introduced a new lift shaft to give access to the first floor here. We carried out some opening up work, some structural alterations to the reception and lounge area. It was a very cellular layout before, which made it rather unwelcoming. So we opened that up so the spaces flowed through. But these were modest alterations because budget was always a key consideration. On first floor, there were very few structural alterations. Some were needed where the lift comes up in order to get access throughout the building. And otherwise, it was very much a case of improving comfort for the people working there. I'll just take you through quite quickly, just through some visual illustrations that we produced at the design stage, just giving the client a very simple understanding of what we were doing. So this is the reception area. Opening up on the right, you can see through here. Previously, this was all closed off into rooms. And then looking through, sorry, I jumped ahead there. Looking through into the lounge space, which would then open out into a small garden. Trying to introduce plants, etc., to make the place more pleasant. A new coffee bar. Meeting rooms with acoustic sound absorbent paneling. And this would be the main office space upstairs. So, and this is the boardroom. So very much working with what we've got, but trying to use minimum means for a kind of maximum impact, if you like. In terms of building regulations, there's two routes you can go down in the UK. You either used an independent approved inspector, or you use the local authority, and you can choose which one you do. In this instance, we went with an approved inspector. And it works by you submit your plans to them at the design stage. They undertake a plans check and tell you whether they are in compliance, the design is in compliance. And then they visit site during the construction works to sign it off at key intervals and ask for additional information as the project is built. I've written at the bottom there, compliance was straightforward. And it was, in terms of the building regulations, it was an easy one because CABE wanted to exceed those minimum requirements. So pretty much on everything, you'll see the next page here just explains the key parts of the approved documents that related to this project. So structure, fire, ventilation, combustion appliances, because we did some work to the boiler. Thermal performance was very important, part L, in terms of the upgrades we made, which I'll talk about. Accessibility through the new lift, and then part P, which are the new electrics. So the way it works in the UK, there are a suite of approved documents from A through to S now, and each part has a different area of focus, but these were the ones that were relevant to CABE's project. A key part of this was actually in relation to part L, which was about the energy performance of the building. And we undertook some thermal modelling to see what measures would have the greatest impact. And primarily these were to insulate the ceiling to stop overheating and losing heat through the roof, and to change the windows. And those two key things, even without any wall insulation, actually had the biggest impact in terms of energy savings and carbon savings per pound or money spent. So that is what we embarked upon. So new windows throughout the building. Putting new windows in is a real win-win because new windows do so many things. You've got the better thermal performance straight away. You've got better air tightness. We then had fully controllable openings and trickle ventilation so that the users were actually happy to open the windows and to close them as much or as little as they need to. You get better daylight, you can coat them, so we reduced the problems of overheating in summer by having reflective glazing on the south and west sides. And of course, you get a much nicer appearance. So the windows were a big part of the project. The other big issue was, although the ceiling had some insulation in, some thermal insulation, it was very poorly installed. And I think this is a problem in a lot of buildings of this type. And you can see the photo at the top there shows how the insulation that had been laid in had been disturbed, so that it wasn't providing a continuous layer. The photo at the bottom here then shows what was done, whereby additional mineral wool was added in between the rafters. It's a very simple solution, but actually its impact was really high. So there are some photos. I'll just lastly say, I'm going to try and wrap up now, that the key thing about this project, the key message that I'd like to convey is how hard we worked with the client to avoid throwing things away and buying new things. It was very much about everything. Can we keep it? Can we retain it? Can we upcycle? Can we upgrade it? Can we use it again? And the result of doing that, you don't end up with a building that looks brand new, but you end up with a building with a lot of character that kind of has a slightly unusual, aesthetic, if you like. But to achieve that, you need a client who understands that's what they'll get. And you need a contractor who's prepared to actually spend the time. Contractors love to just buy new, but getting them to kind of understand that cultural change, to work hard with existing materials. So for example, the bookshelves here were all upgraded from things that ordinarily would have been thrown away. So I think I'll probably stop there because I've just run over my target of 10 minutes and I've gone to 11. I'll finish with this one just to say we costed the project and it came out at, well, depending on what unit metrics you like here, £685 a square metre, which actually when you consider full new services throughout, new windows throughout, structural improvements, new lift, etc., I think was extremely good value for the client. So I'm going to stop there and say thank you, and back to you, Imad.
Thank you, Ben, for this outstanding presentation. Being a member of the Chartered Association of Building Engineers, now I can relate to the building. So thank you very, very much for that. And my friends and colleagues, I'm going to take you across the Atlantic all the way to New York. We have architect Ben Stagg, is the founding director of Stagg Architects. We have Brian Fanning. Brian Fanning is a registered architect with the American Institute of Architects. He's a lead accredited professional, is a partner at FX Collaborative, a New York City-based architecture, interiors, and planning design firm. Brian specializes in a large-scale residential, commercial, and mixed-use projects with a strong understanding of how buildings evolve from ideas to realized structures. He holds a breadth of experience that spans all phases of the design process. Brian has worked on many of the firm's key projects, including One Willoughby Square, Newsons Tower, the Greenwich Lane, West End, and 87, Avalon Clinton, and 11 Times Square, among other projects. His goal on each project is to develop a clear design vision and translate that into a built-in reality while maintaining the clarity of the vision from the massing down to the craft of the details. Brian holds a bachelor's degree of architecture from Cornell University, and I'm looking forward to his presentation on the new iconic workplace. My friend Brian, the floor is yours now.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Shadi and Ben. It was really interesting to see that range of projects. I'm just going to share the screen now. Hopefully that all worked. Is everyone seeing this? Okay, so I will try to jump right in, and I will try to keep moving quickly also, so maybe we have a minute or two left at the end for any questions. So I think you got the introduction. The project I'm presenting today is our project 1 Willoughby Square, which is a 34-story LEED silver office tower, but the whole podium level is a school. Almost everything we end up doing in New York now is some kind of hybrid project like that. I think just the nature of the density and all that we're dealing with. So the site is in downtown Brooklyn. It's the red T-shape you see there, and the green is a new park that hopefully will be constructed in not too long, just north of us. If you're not super familiar with New York, just off the left of the screen, across the East River is where Manhattan is. Zooming in on the neighborhood, the red is the footprint of our site. The kind of ghosted in green is the park. And a lot of these buildings around us are fairly recent, very high-rise residential buildings, but this is actually the first office building of any size coming to downtown Brooklyn in about 30 years. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm going to run very quickly through kind of the big design concept, and then the code and building department influences that also affected how it developed. So it was creating this iconic workplace and really about creating a place that would attract the Brooklyn creative class. I'd say generally Brooklyn is seen as where a lot more of those creative type people like to live. So the idea was, let's create an office building for companies that want to attract them. I won't go through all these individually, but the parameters for our design, I will say, were a little more flexible than kind of the most typical Manhattan office building that has a lot of somewhat formulaic things you need to meet, and this gave us some flexibility to create a really bespoke building here. We looked a lot at the heritage of Brooklyn, the industrial heritage. In particular, we were looking quite a bit at the Brooklyn Army Terminal, which is what you see here. We were also looking at the context of what office buildings are kind of looking to become as the way we work evolves. This was pre-pandemic, but fortunately many of these trends kind of play into what's only developed further, allowing for a lot of outdoor spaces, a lot of amenities within offices, a little more of a hospitality feel. So the big picture concept was taking this sort of iconic ground scraper of an industrial building, flipping it vertical, and inserting kind of green open outdoor spaces into it. And then in terms of developing the massing, we had this T-shaped site. So the idea was, let's create this beautiful open loft and try to compress all of our core elements into the stem of the T of the site. And then we pulled that apart, which allowed for this openness that connected to the rear yards that run down the block per New York City zoning, and also allowed for this connection to the park, both visually and a literal outdoor connection. You'll see there's a lot of balconies in this area in the development of the building. Then we inserted these cutouts that broke up the volume, but also created additional outdoor space and anchors for the building, whether it's for a tenant that has multiple floors or whether it's a building-wide amenity. So ultimately, this is the look that developed from that. I think it really did carry through a lot of that intent. Let's keep going. So in the plan form, you can see we kept most of that vision. Open loft, this is a high-rise plan, so the core elements are a little smaller, the core, and then the open bridge. And you'll see the core does spill a little further out, and we'll go through some of the reasons why. Code-wise, it was also just kind of a structural necessity, but I feel we did keep a lot of that vision. So this is an early rendering that kind of gives that clear open feel of that bridge element. And with the goal of getting an open space on every floor, didn't fully translate through, but a lot of these ideas of connectivity did. This is in that bridge area, there were a lot of these multi-story connections. That's important to, if you're having a multi-floor office, really trying to keep that connection between the occupants on the multiple floors. This was kind of, again, an early rendering, just kind of showing in one quick picture what these office spaces can be. So the vision of the outside of the building, again, thinking how do we take this industrial heritage, a lot of the rich masonry buildings in the area, and translate it. We looked at kind of the factory divided light windows, but reinterpreted them. That's actually glass between the two spandrels, one piece, and then those are sunshades floating free, but it does sort of harken back to that look of the divided lights. And then you had the glazed brick spandrels, and you have the vertical metal piers. And those glazed spandrels, we looked at terracotta, we looked at brick. After many costing constructability studies, we ended up doing a glazed brick set in a precast panel. It allowed for a lot of very nice coursing expression that would have been a lot of difficult masonry work on site. You can get a feel for how this all came together in these construction photos. This is the look of the overall. And then this gives you a little idea of the detail, and hopefully you can see here a lot of care went into determining all the special brick shapes. A lot of time went into the selection of the color and texture that really allows the building to react to the atmosphere, the weather, the light at the time. And then I'll go very quickly through this to save time, but we're lucky enough to have our office in the building. It's, I think it may be the first LEED Platinum version 4 office space in the country, which we're very proud of. But I'll just zoom through this, but you can see some of those elements we just talked about, how it was actually put into the first office in the building. These are the kind of common areas, and that tall super floor, that's the 7th floor. These are the working areas. And this is not even the full span, because we had a lot of conference rooms and things. We're only using about 2/3 of that span. So hopefully that gives you a good feel for the overall design. So now wanted to cover how some of these goals were also influenced by some of these building department and code influences. So this is now a low-rise plan. It looks familiar, but you can see the core spills over a little more. And there were a lot of code issues, obviously, driving the core. One of them is this 3rd stair. So in New York City, post 9/11, a rule came into effect that if your building's over 420 feet and not residential, you need an additional stair. So this meant we were looking at a few options. One was, what if we just keep it under 420 feet? That didn't really meet the client's goals. It made the floor-to-floor heights too tight. It really was a little too compressed to be working the way that was wanted. We looked at this exception under the code for an occupant egress elevator, but at the time it was under design. There just wasn't a comfort level that any elevator manufacturer could truly meet all of the requirements laid out in the code. So the owner didn't want to take that risk to totally be reliant. Oops, catch my computer there. That would be ready in time. So we did then proceed with the additional stair, which meant a lot of the more typical regulations then affected how we designed the building. So that's a lot of issues like the remoteness of the stairway enclosures, the separation of the stairway doors, the overall travel distance, and the common path of egress travel. It all was very workable in our design. The one issue that did sort of come up that we have to be aware of is because the core is all kind of pushed that one way. If you look at multi-tenant scenarios, how we could divide up this floor between multiple tenants, you just have to be careful that you don't bottleneck people and have an issue with that common path of egress travel. One other accommodation in the New York City zoning resolution that made the 3rd stair a little more palatable to the owner is the fact that if you do have to implement it, you're allowed to deduct the area of it, which obviously is very important because then they can put all their zoning area, you know, in the same way they would have in a building with 2 stairs. So then that allows us this open loft feel by keeping that core all on that side. One other important element of the open loft was the idea here, these creative companies, probably a lot of them are interested in a slightly more industrial look and probably having open ceilings, slightly less finished spaces. In New York City, the default for an office building really is to do a steel building with a concrete core. In this case, knowing it would be exposed, there's the concern that fireproofed steel with spray-on fireproofing is not very attractive to leave exposed. So we explored a lot of concrete options, and in the end, we landed on a solution which is really sort of, I'll say like a curated framed concrete structure, which was great because it can look good when you leave it exposed. Hopefully you saw that as I flipped quickly through our office photos where you can see right up to it. And it was done in a way that anticipated how the MEP could run, so that wouldn't all have to be below that. It also definitely harkens back to kind of that industrial feel of a lot of those buildings. And it allows you to really experience more of that full floor-to-floor height when you're in the space. So this is what it actually looks like on a vacant floor. Looks a little better once you paint it, but I think you can really see here how open this floor can be. You can see that shaping of the steel beam, of the concrete beams, that allows you to run MEP or just pop up to the windows, even these sleeves put in for the smaller MEPs to run through. And you can also, this is just to zoom in and see what a view this has at the upper floors towards Manhattan, which obviously was a key feature. One other important element to the project was this park interface. We're right next to this park. I'll just say on this slide, note this ramp down. At the time the building was designed, it was actually a park on top of a parking garage. In the end, it's just going to be a park, which is great, but it did affect some of these issues. So overlooking the park, obviously, there's a desire to have that visual connection to the park, and at the ground floor, a physical connection. But that did lead to some challenges. So before we were even involved with the project, the owner had pursued a CCD1, which is a construction code determination from the Department of Buildings, to say, hey, can we please consider the park an open space so we don't have to worry about these fire separations? And that was denied, and I suspect that was because at the time it was not just a park, it was also the roof of a parking garage. So can understand that, but it meant we had to look at those fire separation regulations. And in the table that defines those, there's a footnote that says, and it's further clarified by this building's bulletin, sort of with commissioner's discretionary approval, you're allowed openings, but mainly that's beyond 60 feet. So really what you're seeing here in this shaded zone is a solid area up to 60 feet that had to be fire rated. No one was paying for fire rated glass here, but this is extremely exposed. So the idea was, okay, let's do some spandrel glass so it still looks like the rest of the building. But it also actually created an opportunity that sort of making lemons out of lemonade, public art wall that could be just constructed as a simpler wall, but also give something back to the community and to the park. So in the end, this is the location in context. And an artist, Ruben 415, he goes by, Tony Smoljan, painted a mural here, and it may not be his mural forever. The idea is this can change over time. And this is what the final product was like. And this dirt here currently has a bunch of construction vehicles in it. We're hoping within a year to have a real park there. So then the last element, this is like extremely early on sketch, but one element we were able to keep was really this bicycle connectivity, that you really can get into the building in a way that doesn't feel really second class with your bicycle if you're commuting into work that way. So in the final iteration, you come in through the park, come into this bike entrance lobby, drop down the elevator into this bicycle room. And a very nice and important amenity to that are these 7 little private restrooms that also have showers. So if you come in and you're sweaty, you have the opportunity to freshen up before work. But New York City zoning actually prohibits showers in commercial buildings. I believe that was due to sort of illegal uses and conversions where commercial buildings were actually being used residentially. So there was this TPPN, which is a technical policy and procedure notice the building department put out that said, well, if you do these certain things, it might be allowable. So we went in with another CCD1 to allow that, and we did get it. Although this is an early rendering, and you'll see it's across the hall from the bike room. So we thought that separation might be nice, but they said, no, you really have to stick to the letter of that TPPN. They have to open directly into the bike room. So that's what we ended up with. You see here, pardon the construction dust still present, but these private little rooms actually are very nice. It's a real contrast to that rough bike room, but it's a good place. I have colleagues who use it when they ride in, and they're finished nicely. So it really is this opportunity that you can commute with your bike, freshen up if you need to, and go upstairs. And it's very nice that there are these sort of carve-outs the building department makes, that if you do these things the way they want, that avoids the concerns that led to these rules. There are ways to get things like this incorporated. So hopefully I made that with enough time, but that was the presentation on One Willoughby. And okay, we have 5 minutes left. So.
Well, Brian, thank you very, very much for this outstanding presentation. We appreciate your time and your presence here with us. And I'm going to open up the floor right now to any questions from the audience, to any of our esteemed friends here. Are there any questions? Lawrence, Sunil, is there any question, please?
We don't have any questions from the audience at this moment.
Okay, okay. I have actually a question to ask. Having worked on both sides of the counter, sometimes it's pretty difficult to go back and convince, the owner of some minor changes that you have to do to the design in order to meet the building code requirements. So my questions to Brian and Ben and Shadi, how did you navigate through that if you run into that sort of issues? So any of the speakers are welcome to to take that question.
Sure. Well, I'll say I think Shadi covered one aspect of it, which is trying really hard to make sure you cover all of it the first time, because it's much harder to handle with a client as a surprise later. But I think it's really just trying to set them up with the information, like with the third stair. We did a number of presentations, really trying to lay out, here's the rule and here's the ways you can accommodate it, and kind of laying out the pros and cons so that they really have at their fingertips the information they need to make that decision.
Excellent. Ben, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the client obviously doesn't enjoy kind of late surprises, and usually, if that happens, we would be asked the question as to, why we didn't tell them this earlier. So, I mean, the answer for us is always to engage as early as possible with the approved inspector, and talk to them, and to actually get their input really at the stage where you're first coming up with those early concepts. Because I think if you do that, then you're far less likely further down the line to get caught on things. The other issue we've had more recently, though, is a number of changes to the building regulations which have come in, particularly in regards to fire, following the 5 years ago, the Grenfell Tower fire. So that caught a lot of people out, because quite rapidly after that, changes were made, and projects that had already started had to be redesigned while they were being built. But that was quite an unusual, exceptional situation. I mean, usually that can be avoided by early engagement with the inspector.
Thank you, Ben. Bashmanis Shadi, any thoughts on that?
Sometimes we face these kind of situation, but not because we didn't we didn't follow the rules, but sometimes because the rules changes. So the rule changes, then we create a surprise for you. But the problem is that this kind of things take from the leasable areas, and it affects the financial model for the client. So it's not a good situation for him and for us, because sometimes the damage is very, very big, and sometimes with some luck and some smart solutions, and sometimes digging in the code to find a way out from this situation. Sometimes sometimes it gives us a better situation in some cases, because if the challenge is bigger, sometimes we find better solutions, and we get better in the product and the project sometimes. But we don't like these kind of surprises, to be honest here.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from our architects to each other on the projects that we presented?
Sure. I was kind of interested seeing Shadi's project, and I think this kind of goes to the differences, different places. If I was understanding the photos to the plans right, is some of that egress path, like from the classroom to those stairs, is it both indoor and outdoor? Because I know, like here, we're not allowed to have an egress path go from inside to outside and back in again.
No, there is no from inside to outside. One of them is for a terrace, then to the exit stair, and it's outdoor already. So it's not a fully covered stair. The other one is fully covered stair, and it's all indoor space. So but I think in our code, in our fire fighting code, you can go to the exit stair through an outdoor terrace or
Well, I
something.
could understand climactically it would be a very different situation because you're not going to be
Yeah.
snowed into your snowed out of your exit.
Yeah, because if you went to an outdoor area, so you are safe, because they in the firefighting situations, they are afraid from the smoke more than everything. So if you are in an outdoor area, so there is no smoke, so they will be safer than any indoor spaces.
Thank you, Engineer Shadi. My next comment: is there a unique story that actually you experienced during the design, or also the building of the project? Is there anything that you need to share with us on that?
Oh yeah, Matt, are you asking anyone?
Anyone, of course, anyone. Ben, Brian, and Shadi. Ben, you have something to share?
Sorry, Matt, could you ask the question again?
No, I was, asking if there's a unique story that you can share with us on during the design and the construction of the project that took place, and if you can share with us on that.
I guess off the top of my head, the one I'll just think of that I think is pretty unique, and I guess it's an element, that we have the rare privilege of actually occupying a building we designed, is you're allowed to do phased temporary certificates of occupancy. So we actually have been in the building a year, even though hadn't been totally finished. So things were going on. So I actually had the experience of one of our consultants, who's also doing some of the what's called special inspections, more than once, like go by on a lift, like outside the window, and like wave to you as you're working at your desk, and all of a sudden you see your consultant go by. So that was a unique, interesting experience to have, that I've never experienced on another project because I haven't occupied them.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for sharing that. Ben, anything that you need to
Well,
share
if
with us?
I may, Imad, there's nothing springs to mind, but if it's okay, could I ask Brian a question?
Absolutely, please.
Is that
please.
okay? I was just intrigued by the third stair that Brian mentioned, because in the UK at the moment there's a big debate about single stair tall buildings, and the government is repeatedly being asked to give clear advice on whether or not they're acceptable and at what heights, and it's still not entirely clear. So you're talking about a third stair was needed. Do I take it by that single stair buildings are just not allowed at all?
Once you get to sort of, I'll say, if you have a single family home or maybe a very small townhouse, you might be okay with a single stair. But once you get to anything of size, you're required at least 2 stairs. There is an exception that in residential buildings, you can do what's called a scissor stair, where it's 2 basically intertwined stairs, but they are fire separated. But any other use, you do need the 2 stairs. I think New York City kind of has a long history on this, probably going back to the Triangle Shirtwaist tragedy. So there has been a lot of concern and care about that, and all the fire escapes you see off the front of buildings are older ones that had a single stair. That was kind of the after the fact remediation. So basically anything needs 2 stairs, and over 420 feet, with an exception for residential, which I'm sure everyone could debate, has to have that third stair. Or I don't know, I haven't researched real recently, but maybe that occupant egress elevator will become more of a option as more companies really develop it in the future. But that came through pretty strongly after 9/11, when I think there was a lot of focus and concern on safety, especially on some of these really tall buildings. So.
Wow.
Excellent, excellent. I really appreciate your time and for being with us. This has been really an enlightenment for all of us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your work. And with that, well, there's one note that I need to indicate. If there are any questions after we conclude the webinar, you are welcome to email that questions to Ms. Judy Zakrasky, the Senior Vice President of Global Operations Solutions at the ICC. Her email is
I think Mr. Richard has a question. Sorry for interrupting.
Okay.
I see one of our attendees has a question, but I don't know what is the question is, but it seems that...
Okay. Lawrence, do we have a question?
Actually,
Absolutely.
we had a comment from Mr. Richard Flynn, and it was very kind, and I want to echo his comment as well. He said, "Thank you for the wonderful set of presentations. Very different projects, which covered a broad range of regulations and client requirements."
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you. But any questions on any of the three projects, please forward it to j.zakrasky@icc.org. On behalf of the ICC and the Global Membership Council, I wanted to thank you all for attending, and thank you, our esteemed architects, for this outstanding presentations. I wish you a wonderful holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and a progressive and productive year ahead. Thank you so much, and we are very pleased, to have you all.